Hi, I'm Praveen Gopal Krishnan, and this episode of the Nutgraf is titled We Just Found Out How to Break the Swiggy and Zomato Duopoly. A few weeks back, we recorded a 2x2 podcast episode about Swiggy and Zomato launching 10-minute food delivery apps like Snack and Bolt. Throughout the episode, multiple times I posed a question to all of my guests. How will Swiggy and Zomato get disrupted? I'll talk about the defense. The defense is very important because Swiggy and Zomato are two companies that are, despite the 95% market share, are super paranoid simply because they are waiting for the company to come, or they're keeping their eye out for the company to come and break the duopoly. And this has happened in two sectors already. If you look at Ola and Uber had a duopoly until Rapido came. Rapido came and took the customers from bottom of the market by taking these two-wheeler riders, and they started disrupting them. If you look at e-commerce, Amazon and Flipkart had a duopoly until Meesho came from below and took away these lower users. Now Swiggy and Zomato are looking at Zepto Cafe and saying, is this the one that's going to take our lower users? Oh, not on our watch. We are going to do it too. What does it take for a tipping point to come where a certain critical mass of restaurants just say, that's it, we're switching now?
No, but switching to what?
Switching to the supply, which is the ONDC. The point where...
No, but where are the customers ordering from?
I'm saying, but that's exactly what happens. You have to lock down one side of the network first. And in this case, if the supply gets locked down first, the customers will come.
I don't know, man.
What you need is what I call the aspirational brands, right? The aspirational brands have to make a call that say that, look, I am going to be present on this platform or accessible via ONDC, come what may. Aspirational brands, I mean, like, we need to reach a universe where Domino's is on it. Okay, see, these are the drivers of, like, what, like, you said the bottom feeders, right? Like, these are the brands that actually bring in a large number of people.
We are trying to figure out that there is a duopoly, and that duopoly behaves in certain ways. Yeah. And therefore, how do we break that? And the way to break a duopoly is to essentially introduce a third player.
Sure.
Right? There's nothing else. In sector after sector, we are seeing, duopolistic or oligopolistic concentration. I mean, you can take, let's say, telecom, for instance. You can take ride-hailing, for instance. But you have to bring a third player because a third player then competes, right? Why are Swiggy and Zomato, why did they start Snack and Bistro? Who forced them to?
Zepto.
There is a third player, the joker in the pack, called Zepto. Now imagine a scenario where you're Zepto and you're like, look, this food delivery market looks good. We also, we have nothing to lose. We've already gotten into the 10-minute food delivery space. Why can't we build a ONDC fulfilled or whatever, even if it's not ONDC fulfilled, is fulfilled by us only, but why can't we hope to become the third player? We'll get some of these really flagship restaurants which are pissed with Swiggy and Zomato. We'll offer them better deals because you know what? We have nothing to lose.
Anyway, I think I finally figured out how this is going to happen. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur interested in taking a big slice out of the food delivery market in India, I am giving away the strategy in this newsletter. Send me equity and free pizzas for life later. So it all clicked when I read this a couple of days back. And this is a news article titled Uber Auto Goes Subscription Based, No More Commissions, Cash Only Rides. And it's published in the daily newspaper Mint. And I'm going to read out what it says. Quote, ride-hailing giant Uber has announced a significant change in its operational model for auto drivers in India, shifting from a commission-based system to a software-as-a-service subscription model. As part of this transition, all auto rides booked via the Uber app will now be cash-only, effective from February 18th. A notification on the Uber app informed users about this change. This change aims to keep Uber competitive within the industry. An Uber spokesperson explained, given the industry's shift towards a subscription-based model for drivers, we have decided to align our approach accordingly so as not to be at a competitive disadvantage. Ride-hailing platforms such as Rapido and others have already implemented similar subscription-based services for auto drivers. Under this model, drivers pay a fixed fee for access to the platform rather than a commission per trip. End quote. Aha. So, Essentially, Uber was forced to move away from a commission model to a subscription or a flat fee structure thanks to Rapido and, more importantly, Namayatri. In Uber's own words, they weren't doing this out of the goodness of their heart, but because they wanted to remain competitive. The suppliers, in this case, are auto drivers, they don't like a commission model. They prefer to pay something upfront and access a platform. People who have worked in SaaS probably have frameworks that can tell you when you should charge customers based on usage, when you should charge them based on some access for the software, and when you should charge them based on other parameters. But forget about SaaS. Guess who else disrupted another set of incumbents in another competitive industry by foregoing the commission model? That company was Meesho. In fact, if you go to the Meesho's website right now, which I have linked to in my newsletter, the screenshot on the supplier page has this headline: Sell online to 14 crore plus customers at 0% commission. Now, one company is a coincidence, but two companies following a very similar playbook is where things get interesting. They aren't even the only ones. If there's one thing that we have learned in the last decade in India, it's that newer, younger companies have disrupted incumbents who have built a robust two sided platform business. And they have all done it the same way by introducing some form of a zero commission model. Zerodha did this to stockbroking platforms. No broker followed the same strategy with real estate. Meesho did it to Flipkart, and now Rapido and Namayatri have done it to Uber. Only one market remains, and that is food delivery. At this point, you're probably mentally drafting a strongly worded email to me saying, well, Praveen, actually, food delivery is fundamentally different from all of these, and let me explain why using 17 bullet points. Stop! Just stop. No, it's not. As all platforms go, Swiggy and Zomato are exactly and strikingly similar to Flipkart and Amazon or Uber and Ola. All of these are companies who have built their business from the ground up over the past decade using a business model that made a lot of sense in the 2010s in a market that was expansionary. The one difference is that Swiggy and Zomato's food delivery business, especially Zomato, are slowly starting to generate profits, which kind of puts them in a slightly relatively better position. This is probably why the zero commission disruption hasn't come for them yet, but I don't expect this to last for too long. Ultimately, these are platforms that are operations first companies that sit in between users on one side and fragmented suppliers on the other. There's been no real innovation that's happened in food delivery in the last several years. One could even argue that it's not even possible to disrupt it through some radical new technology or a new paradigm of operations. Structurally, there's nothing significantly different between Swiggy and Zomato and, say, any of Uber, Ola, Flipkart, or Amazon. The similarities don't just stop at the companies, but also extends to the market itself. It's fairly well established that Amazon and Flipkart have hit the limit of transacting customers. And that's also true about ride sharing for Ola and Uber. These aren't markets that are growing rapidly anymore. Growth in revenue for all of these companies comes from their ability to carve out margins rather than in expanding the market. And guess who else is hitting limits in their business? Uh, just take Zomato's latest quarterly report. Look at the trend of the monthly transacting users for their food delivery segment. And I'm going to read this out. Zomato's average transacting customers in million over the last 5 quarters: 18.8 million, 19.0 million, 20.3 million, 20.7 million, and 20.5 million. And here's Swiggy. Swiggy's average monthly transacting users are, for the last 5 quarters, 12.5 million, 12.9 million, 14 million, 14.7 million, 14.9 million. The food delivery market, just like ride sharing and traditional horizontal e commerce, has hit a ceiling. It's not growing as fast anymore. Which brings me to the last and the most important reason why Swiggy and Zomato are next in line for disruption. And that's because of restaurants. We discussed this in much more detail in the podcast episode that I talked about in the beginning. Two-sided networks insulate themselves from disruption because of suppliers. And for these suppliers, the cost of shifting is pretty prohibitive. But just like how sellers were unhappy with Flipkart and Amazon, and just like how drivers were unhappy with Ola and Uber, restaurants are unhappy with Swiggy and Zomato. If you give them a better option, they'll jump without a second thought, even if that option isn't that great to begin with. I'm not convinced that demand lock-in matters much anymore, especially in India, because once suppliers jump, customers will follow without so much as a backward glance. If you don't believe me, just look at what Namayatri did. All put together, I think it's quite likely that we'll see a new food delivery challenger to Swiggy and Zomato emerge pretty soon. Food delivery is a meaty market, and there's no pun intended there. Plus, both incumbents are somewhat distracted chasing 10-minute grocery deliveries, and there's enough discontent among suppliers and enough margin for someone to just jump in and try something radically different. I can also imagine several VCs simply throwing a few $1 million if the right player comes along offering a different model, even if it results in, say, an acquisition. The opportunity is too big to pass on, and the timing seems perfect. So, how will this disruption happen? I'm not sure, but if we draw a line from Rapido, Namayatri, and Meesho, I expect one of three things to happen. The most obvious route is going to come from bottom of the market. Meesho and Rapido disrupted the incumbents by offering zero commissions, which attracted low-end suppliers whom the incumbents were happy to relinquish because it wasn't seemingly worth it for them. Rapido went after autos and two-wheelers, and Meesho went after suppliers who sold kurtas for 250 rupees. And because these platforms gave up their margins, the value passed on to the customer. I can imagine a similar kind of aggregation happening in food delivery. Maybe somebody creates a platform to offer, say, home-cooked meals for entry-level white-collar employees at companies at a price that's so ridiculously low that it seems like a no-brainer for a significant chunk of quote-unquote low-value consumers. Neither Swiggy nor Zomato would want to play in this space. This is how disruption comes from below. This is more or less what Meesho and Rapido did to Uber, Ola, and Flipkart. Another way for this to happen is if some platform is able to aggregate a certain type of supply that's desirable and makes it exclusive. If there is, say, a fast food delivery app that exclusively lists chains like Domino's, KFC, Popeyes, Burger King, and others, I can see how it can pose some serious problems to Swiggy and Zomato. All it requires is for one enterprising, persuasive company to do it, and for a group of restaurants to say, yeah, let's give it a shot. And then, who knows? This is exactly what Namayatri did. It brought all the auto drivers on one app, and well, everyone started using it. Maybe there's a third way. And this is a way that we don't quite see yet. This is actually the most likely scenario. And if there's one thing that's true about disruption, is that disruption typically comes from directions that's unexpected. If Zomato can try its hand at becoming a SaaS company, what's to say a SaaS company can't try food delivery? If you have ideas on how Swiggy and Zomato will get disrupted, write to me. I'll publish some of the best entries in the Nutgraf. This episode was recorded and written by me, Praveen Gopal Krishnan. You can read the full edition on our website at theken.com/thenutgraf. Credits for the sound and production to Rajiv CN. I'll see you again next week.